Hola, it's Joe Partavila. Thanks for taking the time to listen to a new episode of the Forbes Books podcast. And as a consumer, I'm a big fan of one-stop shopping. I like the idea of being able to go to a place where I can buy cereal and tires. Sometimes I wish there was a magical place like that to handle my finances. Well, actually there is someone like that, and no genie or lamp is required. Today I'm chatting with Toby Mathis, the founder of Infinity Investing and Anderson Business Advisors, one of the most successful law, tax, and estate planning companies in the country. Hello, Toby.
Hey, Joe. How are you doing?
I'm really good, and I'm so excited to have you on because I've been going through like a major change in my life. So I'm looking to buy my first home in my in my entire life. I'm very involved in what's going on in my 401k and what I've built up. So I'm so happy that you're here, and I hope that you're not going to charge me for this session. Is that okay?
I will not send you a love letter with numbers on
it. You're not going to send me, all of a sudden I'll check my email like, you owe Toby Mathis $250. Oh, no. But I want to talk about the book you put out recently with Forbes Books that's titled Infinity Investing, How the Rich Get Richer and You Can Do the Same. The subtitle catches me here. So, How the Rich Get Richer and You Can Do the Same. What do you mean by doing the same?
The whole idea is that, hey, there's folks out there that are very good at making money and you can do the same thing. The problem is what's being taught out there is how to lose money. And they're really good at teaching us how to lose money. And so if you follow, the people that are trying to be day traders or trying to do their own investing, they oftentimes hit walls. And then if they go to a so-called professional, they find that most of the benefit goes to the professional. And they really don't know where to look or what resources are out there because so many are already corrupted by a system that's designed to kind of move the money out of your pocket into the pocket of others.
I've heard you use the word teaching. You use it on your YouTube videos that they're teaching you this way. Now, who is they? Who is this mysterious they?
Marketing. When you sit down and you watch TV, when you're listening to the radio and you hear advertisers, they're always telling you what you should be doing to be happy. Whether you're in school or any of the institutions of higher learning or the talking heads on TV, they're telling you, live the American dream, big car, fast car, new house, big house, vacations. They're teaching you how to behave. There's lots of credit card opening. Hey, you get the 0% opening interest. This is great. They're teaching us constantly what we're supposed to be doing. The question is, you're getting bombarded with this, and do you have enough information to arm yourself against it? It's the same thing with whether it be food or anything else. There's a lot of stuff on TV that if you ate what was actually marketed, you probably wouldn't be that healthy. And so the stuff that's not really sexy and that doesn't really sell is usually what's good for you. And the same is true in financial services. It's the same exact situation, which is kind of the boring stuff is what works. But that's not sexy. It doesn't sell, so you don't hear about it a lot.
And you did a YouTube video back in May, and it was titled "How Banks and Media Are Ripping You Off." You mentioned how the media is doing it. How are the banks doing it?
Banks are really good about doing things that are in their best interest. So when you do a loan, you got to understand that there's an asset and a liability side to that. And I have a real simple rule. We do this in the book too, which is assets feed you, liabilities bleed you. Assets put money in your pocket every month. Liabilities take money out. So if you want to know whether something's an asset or a liability, just look at your bank account. And the banks are fantastic at selling you on putting yourself into a liability situation while they're getting more assets on their balance sheets. A mortgage is a great example. You think, hey, I have this piece of real estate, I have an asset. It doesn't put money in your pocket. That is not an asset. That is a liability. And you bought a liability with a loan, which is also a liability. So anybody that's looking at this could say, wait, that's probably going to be difficult for you, right? That's not a great situation. If you lose your job, if you're adversely impacted by a pandemic, any of these things could cause you to be in a situation where those liabilities compound on each other and you lose the house that you thought was yours. And then you realize, wait a second, it was never really mine in the first place.
All right, well, I'm just applying for my first mortgage. Are you saying that I made a horrible mistake?
No, so Joe, the way I look at houses is there's a cost to live in the area that you want to live. And so a mortgage broker is always going to say, hey, what can you afford? And they're going to max it out, and they're going to use percentages, like 30% of your income and these types of things. And I say, no, don't do that, because you're going to fall into the trap. What you do is you look at it and say, what could I live in that neighborhood for? Let's say it's $1,500. I could rent a place in that same neighborhood. Then you have to take a look and say, could I buy it cheaper, including all the added costs of having home ownership? Mm-hmm. Because reality-wise, that's not an asset. That's a liability. It may go up in value, but it's never going to be something that pays you every month that you can go buy groceries with. So it's not something you want to play around with to where all of a sudden I am real estate rich and cash poor. You have to understand that ends badly for the consumer. We saw it in 2008, 9, and 10. We just saw the market just go upside down and really cause a lot of financial pain for a lot of Americans across the world, frankly. But it was all on that premise, is that we had taken out mortgages against something we thought was an asset when it was really a liability.
And let's step back and talk about your history and how you got here, because you're a rarity, and I could be wrong, but you're a rarity from what I see, because usually I see investing guys and they go to school for financing, get BFAs, all that jazz. But you're involved in investing, but you're also an attorney. So how do you blend those two facets together into forming what you do?
Well, good question, and very fair question, and I'll put it like this. I'm a tax attorney. I spend a lot of time working on business planning, asset protection, and tax planning, legacy planning for people, and you start noticing something with your clients. So we do about 9,000 tax returns a year in my firm. And so you look and see who's successful over the long run, and you start noticing patterns. On the same token, you look at people that are not successful and you notice patterns. And the people that keep kind of doing the crash and burn, and then they repeat, crash and burn, repeat, build it up, they're going after the next new thing. They're trying to time things. They're trying to take advantage of quick hits, and they're really focused on their active income. Whereas the people that build up long-term wealth are really focused on things that make money just by owning them. And so the true definition of an asset is something that pays you while you're sleeping. So we just want to sit there and, accumulate assets. The problem is we've been misled as to what assets are. Again, a big car and a house are the big culprits. I see people all the time that I say, well, what's your net worth? And they start listing their RVs and their boats and all their toys and stuff like that. And I go, really, that stuff has a liquidation value of about 10 cents on the dollar. It's not much. I used to do liquidation, so I mean what I say is a lot of that stuff, when you're selling it at auction, it's not really worth much. But that's not truly an asset. An asset is something that while I'm sleeping, whether I go on vacation, whether I'm traveling the world, the asset's doing the heavy lifting. So that's rents, royalties, dividends, interest, capital gains in some circumstances, like if you're selling options on your portfolio. Those things are truly assets. So the right type of stock portfolio, for example, could be paying you, sometimes monthly, sometimes quarterly, but they pay you year after year, and that revenue starts to add up. And if you do the right types of companies, you'll realize in 20 years that you have quite a stockpile. It's probably already paid for itself, and now it's pure gravy, and you can live off of that. And it just means you don't have to work anymore.
For investors who are maybe new to the game, because as you've probably noticed in 2021, you see a lot of people getting into Wall Street thanks to Reddit threads and suggestions by these people who are saying, hey, buy this stock. And so it's become very top of mind, where I remember as a Gen Xer being a kid, the Wall Street and stock market, it just seemed like another world. Like it seemed like, okay, that has nothing to do with me in any way whatsoever. But it's sort of now bled into everyday life, where everyone has something. Everyone who's working in a white collar job, who works is a knowledge worker, their a lot of their equity and their hard earned money is going into a 401k, an IRA, any one of those you want to talk about. So what are some mistakes that people are doing right now in terms of if they're getting involved in investing right now?
So the biggest mistake you see is people really working on the timing of it. instead of picking good companies that have built-in, I call them compounders, things that are part of that company that pay out to you, so that you're not just giving them a no interest loan. Basically, hey, I bought some stock and it's not doing anything for me, but the stock I hope goes up. That type of thing it's not going to lead you to success. You want to have something that is actually paying you to own it. So it makes the stock market very, very small. And I see that as being one of the biggest areas of mistakes, is that these people are chasing money and they do let emotion rule them, as opposed to letting numbers dictate when they should be getting in and out of positions. And they're not extremely disciplined. But I will say this: I love the apes, the Reddit folks, for one thing that I really agree with, which is I'm a buy and hold forever kind of guy. So when we acquire an asset, it's not to hope that it goes up and sell it. It's to buy it for the income stream. I don't care so much about the value of the company. I care what it's paying out every year. And I want it to keep increasing that. And there's companies that have been increasing the amount they pay out year after year for 25 years, 50 years. You start looking at those and you realize, wait, if I bought it 25 years ago, you mean every year I got a raise? And then you look at Amazon, which doesn't pay anybody anything except it shills and doesn't pay its taxes. Like, what is that doing? Other than, hey, it's cool, I love using Amazon, but as an investor, I got to be scratching my head. I'm like, hey, if it goes up, okay, I sell it once and then I'm done. I want something that I hold on for a long period of time. And the Reddit folks, they call themselves diamond hands. And they use this term HODL, HODL, which is hold on for dear life. And I'm like, I can get behind that. I don't agree with with your fundamentals. I understand why you're buying AMC, BlackBerry, all these companies. I understand that you care about the company and you're doing it with purpose. So I can get it. And they're saying, don't sell it, and it forces the company to go up. I agree with that 100%. And I tell people, hey, if you're buying the good companies, you're not trying to time it. You're not selling it. That just means there's less sellers out there. That just means the company's going to keep going up, and that's what you want. Maybe we're a small community, but it does have an impact. And if you're buying companies for their revenue stream as opposed to hoping that the price adjusts, you're going to be much more successful in the long run.
You know what I loved about that whole situation was the fact that it basically outed the system in terms of just being an inside game, because it was funny to see all these organizations, the Robin Hoods of the world, saying, okay, we can't handle this now, we're going to stop. But only because a lot of people were involved in buying this stock. They wouldn't do that to a big player or someone who's heavily invested. But if these day traders get involved, like, no, we gotta stop this right here. So it just shows you that it's like, hey, wait a minute, this system is not built for the everyman.
It is built to transfer wealth, and the rules favor those who know the rules first off. But it's about volatility, and I remember it kind of like hit me. So I've been working in this field for over 2 decades, and stock trading and option trading, and you see all these option traders. And I did a study internally, and we had some pretty bad numbers for traders saying, oh, you guys aren't so successful. But then the numbers came out on a national study where about 95% of the people that day trade lose money. And I'm like, well, I know who makes money in that, the clearinghouses, the brokerage firms. Anybody who's got their hand in that pie is making money. Of course, then the round trip cost of buying and selling securities has gone down. But I'm still saying there's money in that transaction. There's the deal flow. There's all these things going on, and it's not in your best interest. And so I started looking at it. I have a buddy, a client buddy, well over $100 million. And when we were in the pandemic and the energy prices went negative, I said, so how, what are you going to do to hedge on the energy? It's coming back. Are you finally going to do options? He goes, Toby, I just can't get my head around buying an option. I have to be right about 3 things. If I sell an option, I only have to be right about 1. And I think that one comment hit me because I realized that's Wall Street. They want you to go out and buy these things. They're constantly agitating, and the volatility is good for that options market. The volatility is good for the securities market. It means there's lots of people buying and selling, and the people that make money on the buying and selling are making even more. If you just bought and held, if you did what Warren Buffett and Munger have said over the years, which is, the hardest thing to do is to sit on your hands. If you just bought and let the companies, good, successful companies, when I say good, successful companies with a track record of at least 20 years, if you just focused on those, you have a very small market and you have a really good chance of success in the long run without having to play all these games of trying to figure out when to get in and get out. You buy it, you forget you bought it. You just sit on your hands. You could rent it out if you own enough shares. You could do what's called a covered call, and you could rent it out and make a little money. But you're going to be making money on the dividend no matter what. And this is what's most interesting. So you asked me the question about how I got into it as from the law side. I'm a tax attorney, and the code tells us what to invest in. You want to be invested in something that pays you a dividend because dividends are taxed as long-term capital gains. If it's a qualified dividend, U.S. company, U.S. taxpayer, you're paying 0% on that, depending on your tax bracket, maybe 15 if you're in a really high tax bracket, 20. But it's better than if I earned money, working at McDonald's. I don't have employment taxes on it. I mean, literally, it's kind of weird, but you look at it and you go, wait a second, the tax code is telling us what to invest in. And I just started focusing on those people that were really successful. I don't have an original idea in the book. Infinity investing is all about doing what successful people have already done, what they do consistently despite all the noise that's out there telling you to do something differently. But they all do pretty much the same thing, and they build up these revenue generators that just print money constantly. And it may start off small, but you give it a long enough run, and as it compounds, it will experience exponential growth. It just does. That's math. And it compounds over time. And it might take 20 years, might take 30 years, and you're really impatient. Don't be impatient. Understand that these things take time. It's like baking a cake. You don't take it out when it's half done. It's going to ruin the cake. Let it do its thing. Follow the recipe, and you're going to get the same result.
And not that we're making this an advertisement or anything like that, or even something you're suggesting. Two guys sitting at a bar. If one of the couple of these buy and hold companies that you're really fond of that you think people should look into, not invest into, but just look into.
Well, there's a whole bunch of them. So, you got Procter & Gamble, 3M, Walmart's a dividend aristocrat. Coca-Cola has been paying its increasing dividends for more than 57 years, I think it is now. It's going to be names of.
Okay.
Procter & Gamble. You're going to look at Federal Realty Trust. There's a bunch of them. I think there's a total of 25 that have done 50 years and all, but you're probably looking at about a total universe of companies of about 60 companies.
And you seem like you're a pretty old school guy, so let's bring in a little bit of the new school here. I've spoken to a lot of Bitcoin and crypto evangelists. What's your take on that whole scene?
So we get a lot of it on the cryptocurrencies, and you got to understand what it is. It's not an asset. It doesn't pay you anything. So it's going to fall into something called a cash or cash equivalent. And when I'm building out portfolios, or the way I explain it, and I'm not a financial planner, don't pretend to be one. I'm just telling you what successful people have done. We have lots of planners that we work with, but at the end of the day, that's not me. I'm just a tax lawyer who says, here's what's worked for other people a lot. Do that, and you're going to get similar results. But you do about 10% in cash or cash equivalents, which is where your gold, your silver, your Bitcoin, those things go. 30% is going in income-producing stocks. So like if you're going to be a trader, if you're going to buy a portfolio that's an income-generating portfolio, about 30% of your portfolio would go in there, or 30% of your net worth, 30% in real estate or real estate equivalents. So you could do your own, you could do some private offerings, you can do some REITs, and then 30% in managed money by having a fiduciary who manages your money. And if you did that, it's really, really hard to screw yourself up. I mean, it's possible, I suppose. I've just never seen it. But the people that diversify themselves in that way, they're not too worried about what's going on in the news. They're not all hedged in, but they're still doing things. So the Bitcoin may live in that 10%. So maybe they have 1% to 2% of their net worth tied up in cryptos. And if it went down to zero, would they be crying? No, They'd be maybe a little annoyed, but I can't see that happening either. But they're not betting. They're not gambling.
Yeah. It is funny. You do see some of these aforementioned crypto evangelists say, yeah, I'm going to put half my money into crypto. And people, when people say this, and they're usually like really bright, successful people, and I'm like, ugh, you really want to do that? I don't know. It doesn't seem like the smartest thing.
Joe, remember before 2008 how everybody was, you're crazy if you're not in real estate.
Yeah.
Everybody and their mother is buying real estate. You got the liar loans going on. The markets are never going to stop. I remember that in 99 as well. You know, the stock market's going to go up forever. You know, and then you have the big pop. What you have to build your portfolio around is the idea that no matter whether it's going up, down, or sideways, your income doesn't change. It's producing the same income stream regardless. So I was in Las Vegas when the market crashed and we lost 75% of our values. My rents went up, the rents that we charged people, because the market was so strong in the rental market. Not by much, but it didn't go down. It didn't go down like the housing market, and we were able to accumulate a lot more real estate holdings. Stock-wise, the stock market dropped, 38% that year. The dividend kings, by the way, and the aristocrats went down about 14%. But they continued to pay out their dividends. In other words, even though the stock price went down a little bit, the income stream wasn't changed. And where I saw people really hurting themselves is when they bought things based on the value they perceived it was worth instead of the income that it was producing. And so they would speculate, I'm going to buy this house and it's going to go up in value. It's going to double in value in a year. And the next thing you know, they're holding on to this house that's lost half its value with a loan that's, you know, it's way underwater. And they're sitting there going, what do I do with this thing now? And I'm like, well, there's no one to buy it. Nobody's buying anymore. They're not going to refi it. Banks at that point shut everything down. So you're going to be foreclosed on. It's going to destroy your credit for 7 years. That's what these people were facing. And it was good people, smart people, but they didn't buy assets. They bought liabilities. They speculated and they lost. And there was no wiggle room. If you buy assets, you always have wiggle room. Everybody wants an income stream. You know, if I have a widget that pays you $1 a day, there'd be a market for it, even if it's ugly.
And Toby, what do you say to the people, the critics, mind you, that would say, Toby, you're too conservative. Be a little aggressive. Stop sitting on your hands like you keep talking about. What do you say to those people?
That there's lots of shills out there that they could get into doing stuff. Like, the world's full of them. Go out there and sell that crap elsewhere. No offense. I see these people that are constantly egging people on, and quite often they have a dog in the fight. They're gaining off of that person doing something. It's kind of like a realtor, and they say, let's see how much house you could afford. Well, because they're on a commission. A good realtor is going to say, all right, what are you looking for? How many beds? What kind of community? This, that. And they're going to try to match you with the right property. Where I'm at in Vegas, I could tell you, people are like, oh, no, the rates are so low, I can get you $1 million house. And all I could think of is really big utility bill, really big property taxes. I'm going to have to replace that home every 27 and a half years, right? I'm going to have to fix it and all that stuff. And these people have no idea that they just bought a stinking money pit.
And Toby, you have studied wealthy people and how they've built their wealth over time. What are some of those, I guess, traits or personality quirks or something that you saw as sort of like a recurring theme that all these wealthy folk were doing, that you're like, oh, okay, this guy's doing the same thing this other guy's doing, or this girl's doing the other same thing the other girl's doing? Yeah,
Joe, really good question. And the answer is actually kind of surprising. It all boils down to one real interesting trait, which is the ability that you have control over your own destiny. So you have control over money, that you control it, it doesn't control you. It sounds touchy-feely, but I'll tell you, if you are scared of it, and if you're running from a situation of fear, if you are concerned about the market, for example, then you will do things out of emotion, because of that fear, that you wouldn't do if you were like, I got this. I'm not worried about it. It's like the guy that's sitting on the house and everybody's like, oh, you should sell. The market's going crazy. He's like just chilling. I'm not going to sell. 20, 30 years, his house is worth 3 times as much, and he's lived in his house the whole time, and he's been happy. The people that dumped their properties and ran and bought something that was more expensive than they could afford and chased after, that they got foreclosed on. So it's like all these people are constantly aggravating you to do these actions, and probably, it's not all of them, but probably a good 75% are not in your best interest.
And you know, as someone who was there for '08 and saw the aforementioned crash in the housing market, you probably noticed that in 2020, during the middle of one of the worst pandemics in 100 years, it became a seller's market. The real estate industry exploded. And I remember speaking to people in real estate and real estate agents. They couldn't believe it. They thought when the lockdown happened, they're like, "Oh my God, I'm going to be broke. I'm going to be on unemployment. I'm not going to sell any houses." And then all of a sudden, it's the reverse. It became a seller's market, and just you saw these houses going for amazing sums. Like, no matter where you live, if you keep track of like your local real estate, you'll keep seeing articles over and over again like record sale, record sale, record sale. So as someone who's been there, done that, how shocking was it to you to see what transpired during the pandemic in the real estate sector?
To be honest, we called it. So like we knew it was coming because we could see the numbers dropping. You couldn't get rid of tenants. They weren't building houses, and you could see the inventories declining. So we were calling it more than a year ago now. Like we were in the spring, and people were calling for the doom and gloom and saying, what should you do? And I had people bailing on U.S. real estate, and I said, I don't see it. The numbers are telling me the opposite. They're saying that the home values aren't that high, that rents have been steadily increasing. You can't get rid of tenants now. People are going to have money. They've opened up the wallet of the Fed, which has now got 10 trillion on its balance sheet, which never existed before. So money is being devalued while we speak. Inflation's going to pop up a little bit. They weren't producing wood, so you could see that escalating. I think it went up 500-600%. And nobody's building. So we could see this. And right now, I think we're at inventory of less than 2 months nationwide of real estate.
Easily, yeah.
Which is about a third of what it should be. So I'm like, holy schmoly, I don't think it's going away. And personally, I think we've really done a disservice to our Gen Zers and our Gen Yers and our lower income folks, because there's no low-cost housing. The 3 out of 4 houses built after 2008 were for people making over $75,000 a year. The Harvard Joint Center of Housing Studies does a really good job of laying it out, and they do a great study every year, and it's getting dire. So I don't see the housing issue going away. I see it compounding right now. It's getting worse. So what do I tell my people? I'm like, that 30 of your money that's in real estate, make sure that you're getting into, we like manufactured homes, single family homes. Yes, I like duplexes. The multifamily is a little bit aggressive. That's where a lot of the funds went into. BlackRock is now trying to buy up all the single families too. But, I don't think they're going to be nimble enough. They're going to target certain areas. But I think nationwide, there's lots and lots of opportunities. That's what I would be doing. And then I would actually be a landlord that's not a jerk. I wouldn't just try to rehab it, make it worth, hey, let's get some more money out of this thing. I would treat your tenants like human beings, because they are, and be okay making a little bit of money on it, and don't try to flip that house like a lot of people are being taught. It's the same thing with real estate. You buy it with a holding period of forever. It's infinity investing for a reason. You're buying it to hold it for an infinite period of time, so that your kids, your kids' kids, your kids' 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 kids continue to enjoy the fruits of that seed that you planted by buying that income-producing asset.
So, Toby, we began the conversation talking about the book Infinity Investing, How the Rich Get Richer and How You Do the Same. For folks who aren't familiar with the Infinity Investing system, before we go, give me a thumbnail sketch of what the Infinity system looks like.
So the Infinity Investing System is a step-by-step program where you're going to start building up assets that are income-producing assets that are going to replace your income. And basically, you want enough asset base to cover your expenses so you no longer have to work. So you could live an infinite number of days without working. And that's the whole idea. That way, if you have illness, somebody loses a job, we just went through a pandemic. If you have any of this stuff, that it doesn't cause you financial devastation. Plus, you have the freedom to do things that you want. So in the Infinity Investing, is the ability to never have to work again. You have enough income coming in to cover your expenses. I don't really care what somebody's net worth is. I care what their infinity worth is, which is how many days could you live without working? And when you start looking at it that way, it doesn't take that many rental properties. It doesn't take that much in dividend stock. It doesn't take that much in investing to replace your income. And now you're not depleting assets when you're retired. I mean, we see that all the time. My mom's living it right now. She's already stressing over running out of money. Well, what if I live another 20 years? And I'm like, thanks, Mom. I said, I got you. Don't worry. But she's looking at her dollars, and it causes her anxiety. And I would much rather her be in a situation where she's not looking at her money. Instead, she was looking and saying, oh, my portfolio is generating $4,000 a month. That's what I can spend. And I never have to deplete it by $1. Now you have a good inheritance to go to family members or to your charity or to your church or whatever you care about. You keep it in place and just let it benefit your family. You don't have to sell all your stuff to live.
It's funny, that got me thinking what you're just talking about. I mean, do you think the investment world needs to reimagine the way they approach retirements for folks? Because people are living a lot longer. They're saying people could be one day live to like 150. And right now, it seems like the numbers are crunched at, okay, you're going to retire at 65, 67, and you're probably going to drop dead by 80. But it seems like people are living longer. I'm not the math expert here, the legal like yourself, but it seems like we've got to save a lot more because we're going to be living a lot longer.
I agree 100%. You need to have something that's inflation proof, that increases with inflation, which is what rents and dividends do. The profits of companies will, prices rise, they'll continue to, their profit will rise accordingly. Rents will rise along with whatever the market rates are, so that you don't have to change a whole bunch of things. I see this over and over and over again. When somebody's in retirement and the market fluctuates and their stock portfolio drops 20%, and they have to continue to sell off shares or investments because they need that money to live off of. And so they're forced to sell at a time when they can ill afford to do it. Anybody who's been through 2001, 2003, 2008, last year has seen this. And when people liquidate their portfolios when the market crashes, which is a whole bunch of people did last year, if they admit it, there's a number that I've seen where people are like, we're going into cash, we're going into an election year, we need to stop this insanity. And so they sold off when everything crashed during the pandemic, and they missed out on all the recovery. Those people are spending those dollars to live, and it's a real issue. So I think you just hit the nail on the head. The financial industry needs to do a better job of taking care of the clients instead of the financial industry itself. They're really good about lining their own pockets. And you can say what you want about Wall Street. They're very, very good at marketing, and they're very, very good at paying themselves. Clients, maybe not so much.
His name is Toby Mathis. He's the founder of Infinity Investing and Anderson Business Advisors. Toby, it's been a lot of fun speaking with you today. I really, really hope I don't get a bill in the mail for this conversation, but it's been a lot of fun. Thank you very much for sharing all that information, and looking forward to what's next. I have a feeling another book might be in order, huh?
We'll see how this one does and what the need is out there. I really appreciate you having me, Joe.
No really sweat. And Toby, what's if folks listening to this were like, hey, that Toby Mathis sounds like a interesting guy. What's the best way to reach you to find out more about you?
You go to tobymathis.com, or you could go to infinityinvesting.com. You could jump in. Free community, great information. It's actually really, really neat. You can learn a lot.
Thanks again, Toby. And that's it for this edition of the Forbes Books Podcast. If you enjoy the show, make sure you take a second and subscribe so you automatically get my new shows when they drop. Also, if you have a minute, I'd love if you left us a review so more amazing entrepreneurs like yourself can discover the show. And please, don't forget the golden rule and treat others as you want to be treated. Thanks for listening. Until next time, adios.
This has been a production of Forbes Books Radio. Find out more at ForbesBooksRadio.com.